With an exclusive sit-down interview with one of the key figures who participated in this G20 summit and did so much work in the run-up to it. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana joins us around the table here, and I'm joined by my Newzroom Afrika colleague Ziyanda Ngcobo, who's going to help unravel what the Finance Minister makes of the outcome of this G20 summit with me.
Absolutely.
You've had a busy couple of days.
Oh, absolutely, and we're all relieved to be at the tail end of it. Thank you so much, Minister. The mood in this room, you can tell that it's been a great success. You must be so relieved. The finance track, 133 meetings, it is done. It's been a success, Minister.
Yes, very much so. When you prepare for an event of this magnitude, it's difficult to sleep well. Once it's gone, then you relax.
Yeah.
Particularly, it has become a success in the manner it did. And yeah, we need to celebrate.
I mean, Minister, let's talk about some of the low moments in the preparation towards this, because I think what many people don't know is how tough those meetings can get. In fact, remember the first finance ministers meeting, you only issued a summary, and getting consensus is not an easy thing. How did you do it?
Look, on the finance track, the good thing about the finance track is that it's the oldest. The finance track was set up in 1999 after the Asian global financial crisis. So central bankers and ministers of finance, so they've kind of developed certain protocols of engagement. Until 2022, when the Ukraine war pops up, we've never had crisis not finding a declaration. For the first time in Indonesia, we had what was called the chairperson statement because of the disagreement.
Yes.
The same thing in India, we had a chairperson's disagreement, a statement. In Brazil, we came back and found consensus and have a declaration. So in South Africa, a new thing emerged with the Americans coming up with disagreeing with a number of substantive issues. But on the finance track, I think we've managed to find each other to the extent that on the finance track we were able to hand over to the Americans, by the way. They were in the meeting.
Can I ask you about something that President Ramaphosa said in his closing remarks? He said that the opportunity now existed to create a virtuous cycle that would simultaneously reduce debt across Africa, lead to more public investment, and generate greater economic growth.
Yeah.
How do you go about doing that from here? What happens next?
I'll use the finance track as a point of departure. One of the things we've agreed about the African continent, we've got what is called an engagement with Africa, which is a new kind of principled agreement, which is an institutional arrangement which will go beyond us. And among other things is to facilitate investment. We'll engage in the whole G20 countries for an investment on the African continent.
Yeah.
Parallel to that is something we established with the Germans in 2017, what is called Compact with Africa, which now composed of about 15 countries. A third element has been, for the first time, we have a declaration on debt, which is something which has never happened.
Yeah.
We've got a declaration on debt. Fourthly, we ourselves are contributing in that. We've published a document done by our expert panels, which says, how do we go about reducing the cost of capital and dealing with the debt situation on the African continent? Those are milestone in achievement by the South African presidency, which will have long-term effects on the debt trajectory on the African continent.
Speaking of the continent, Minister, one of the things that has come out of this is improving the debt transparency. Now, in terms of from an operational perspective, we know one of the discussions is around almost synchronizing systems, because not all systems on the continent are at the same level, and that is one of the biggest challenges in the organizing of the financial architecture at a practical level, because as we know, this is non-binding. How do African countries assist each other in that regard?
One of the things we're talking about is a borrowers forum. Okay. Among other things, what we need to do is to institutionalize certain things.
Yes.
For instance, one of the things the expert panel says must be done is that where there is rating of a country, where there is debt, is borrowing, it must be based on data. It must be data-driven. In other words, countries of a similar, with the same data, same matrix, must be treated the same. And so a starting point is to institutionalize that data approach of creating a data system which will help us to compare apples with apples.
And the climate financing issue is actually, I noticed, it's one of the biggest chunks in that 30-page declaration from sustainability issues, and also moving away in many aspects, Minister, from reliance on the global north, but also how does the global south organize itself with this financing issue? Because we've just come out of COP30 in Brazil, and still the issue is around how the wealthier nations have not committed or lived up to their commitments towards that global fund.
You know, how I wish the people who go into COP something, whatever COP, had the power to make the decisions they make.
Yeah.
Part of the difficult is that you've got, my own criticism is that you've got the ministers of environment that are sitting there and are making commitments on finances. When they go home...
Then you close the tap.
No, when they go home, their counterparts do not give effect to that. I mean, they promised us billions and billions of rand, but because the principle is following. They have polluted. Therefore, for the world to move away to a clean environment, they must pay. They can't then say, the developed world, which has not created this pollution, must be the one that carried that burden.
Can I ask you about what happens in the next 12 months? No G20 Sherpas here from the United States to engage in any kind of conversations with the South African Sherpas who brought this event to such an extraordinary conclusion. A United States government that clearly rejects the concepts of solidarity, equality and sustainability. And there are suggestions here this afternoon that the United States may have indicated it's going dramatically to reduce the number of working groups that work together ahead of next year's G20 Leaders Summit, and perhaps put more emphasis on face-to-face meetings of G20 finance ministers that may take place on the fringes of the IMF and World Bank meetings in Washington, DC. How are things changing in terms of the architecture next year, or do you yet have a clear sense?
Let me just say how this thing works. It's a rotational issue. President Trump has said the Leaders Summit will be in Miami next year, so which means they accept is their turn. Okay. The first meeting of the finance ministers and central bankers is in Washington on the side of the April whatever.
Yes, spring meetings. The spring meetings. Yes.
It's not unusual.
Right.
Even our second meeting was in the spring meeting. So it's unusual. It's common for on the margins of to have that. So we'll have that. Moving again, can you see I'm moving from the Leaders Summit to the Ministers of Finance and then coming to the Sherpa meetings. The Sherpa meetings are on the 12th of December, chaired by the USA. So from the 1st of December, the USA is taking over in practical.
Minister, when we also look at the institutions that do ratings, we've just actually been lifted with 2 levels below investment grade, and you've actually expressed that you still believe in these mechanisms. But as we know, on the African continent, we're not one monolithic group. Even though the AU has a permanent seat on the G20, there's lots of contestation over these issues. Do you think that's something that is still going to be topical as much as it was for this G20 presidency?
I think we may disagree on a number of issues and compete as economies on the African continent. But insofar as those issues which are headed to growth, there will be agreement. For instance, there will be agreement that we need to make sure that rating agencies treat us equally with others. That's why people think that it is better to create an African rating agency. there's also an agreement that the cost of servicing debt on the African continent is higher than anywhere. And that has got nothing to do with the economic structure of this economy, but has got to do with the perception of risk.
Yeah.
All of those issues need to be attended to.
Minister, also I do need to ask you to draw on another hat, or maybe not another hat, but at a political level, you would know that some of these things you may have great ideas as the National Treasury, but the political environment within which you operate can make it quite difficult. When you look at how there's a decline or waning globalization, there's a decline in multilateralism, do you think that the summit has achieved that reaffirmation of the multilateral architecture, but also against the backdrop of you're no longer going to have a hegemonic force that is overseeing, the space, or that is occupying the space, but the way in which we negotiate is now going to change?
It also goes back to what Simon asked earlier on. The issue about the G20 is a multinational institution. The Americans have not said they do not want the G20. They have said, when we lead the G20, we will put our own footprint on the G20. They're perfectly correct. All of us have done that.
Yes.
So they will put their own footprint on the G20 agenda, like all of us. So it's perfectly correct. But they must understand the outcome of that must be a consensus with all other G20 countries. That's how this thing works, because there's no one country which has got a privileged position in the G20.
There will be South Africans watching this who will say, for years, the continent has said it needs easier access to capital at more advantageous interest rates and a solution to the, $90 billion of debt that is outstanding. And for years at G20 summits like this, there's been discussions about it and promises of action. Why is this time different? Is this time different?
No. It's quite important to say that it's not the first time. One of the things the G20 agreed on was what is called the common framework for debt.
Yes.
This is a build-up on that. You must understand a couple of countries, including next door, Zambia has been a beneficiary in terms of that common framework for debt. By the way, we co-chaired the discussion on Zambia's debt. So it's not something only. What we have said is to say what are the limitations of the current existing framework and how do we build on it. That's how this thing should be seen.
All right, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana, thank you for your time. A buoyant Enoch Godongwana, as he should be, a successful G20 summit.
Absolutely, and the celebration still very much continuing here. But so is our investigation of precisely what this summit has achieved. And that's going to continue next as the Finance Minister leaves us. Foreign Minister Ronald Lamola will be joining Ziyanda and me at the Newzroom Afrika 405 set right here at Nasrec.